Hello everyone and welcome back to Threes to Wound. My name is Reese and it's an exciting day today because we get to talk about the Genestealer Cult and their new kill team in Kill Team. It's really excited. I'm excited. We're going to go through all the bits and pieces, what the team's got, how it works, and I was actually lucky enough to play a couple of test games on the weekend with the team, so I'm going to do a little bit of a tac breakdown of one of the games that I played to just show you how some of the new things work and how the new team operates. So hopefully you're going to enjoy that. It's going to go for a little while, so buckle up, let's jump in. So if you're here watching this video, you're obviously excited or at least very curious about the latest release of the White Dwarf kill teams, I guess the new bespoke or artisan or whatever you want to call it, but obviously the next expansion for a team in Kill Team, and it's the Genestealer Cult. Obviously there's been the release of the Codex and all those extra bits and pieces of the Genestealer Cult, so if you are into them, you know, it's a great time to be a player, and I think this was the perfect time for it to land. Except maybe if now you want some of the models that are going to be new in this team, they may be a bit harder to get. They may become a bit scarce because I think everyone is jumping on, you know, on the bandwagon in the big game and this now, and they should because it's pretty exciting, this team. It's called the Wyrmblade or Wyrmblade. I say Wyrmblade. It's the Wyrmblade team, and it's really exciting. The biggest thing to say with this team is it is spot on for me in terms of the way the team looks, feels, plays, the operatives you're taking, the way the strategic ploys all work. Genestealer Cult was lucky. The Compendium team was hugely competitive, had great options in terms of units you could take, great tactical ploys, great strategic ploys. All those things were already really, really good. So we are a little bit spoilt to now have this come out. And in my humble opinion and very early opinion, this seems to be even better. If this is a sign of the teams to come, I've already been really impressed with the White Dwarf teams and the teams in the box set. Just look at the Tau. They're always really, really competitive. Tau may be leaning a little bit towards broken, but they're still really good, and they still seem very thematic for Tau. They still play the way you expect a Tau team to, with all those rail rifles and drones and all that stuff going on. So I don't think there's been anything that's come out yet that hasn't been thematic. The only team I found to be, I feel a little bit vanilla or not that exciting was probably the AdMech one. Sorry if you're an AdMech player, it's not personal, I promise. I still played it and I like it. I just didn't think it felt as exciting. All the other teams seem to have really added some extra elements that felt really specialized, and the AdMech just felt like they changed the names of a few basic units. They didn't really add any extra flavor. So the first thing we'll start with is having a bit of a look at what you can take in the new roster. And one thing I do want to point out, obviously, no team is perfect, and I think this kill team's done the really good balance of we've definitely lost some things. There's going to be people who are going to be disappointed about some of the units that are taken away. There's also going to be people that are going to be disappointed about what hasn't been added in, but that's how these things kind of work. You've got to take the good with the bad, and you've definitely got to look at it as glass half full, because I think the additions that we've got far outweigh the negatives and the things we've lost or the things that we didn't get. There's still so much time in this game for extra units and extra teams to come in. There's nothing saying we can't have a second round of teams added, you know, that have extra flavor that could be tied in with other releases of, storylines for Games Workshop. So don't panic. Definitely look at this as a huge positive. Don't feel like you missed out, because for a Genestealer Cult player at the moment, we're doing pretty well. We definitely can't win. Speaking of character, there's definitely some rules that have now been added in as a standard across this fire team, and I think they're hugely thematic, and I really like them. One you will have heard before, it's Cult Ambush. It's one that was with the Compendium team, but it was a little bit different and it cost you a CP. This is now a standard rule across all of your team. They all have it. Again, very thematic. Nice. And for me, it really fits with how the Genestealer Cults play in the lore and the story. And that is, in the first turning point, any operative, when you activate them, you can change their order. That is a huge benefit to this team. It's not a game breaker by any stretch of the imagination, but it gives you lots of options with your setup. And you'll see when we go through like the strategic ploys, the tactical ploys, very early on how the synergies work with a lot of this team. And this team very heavily relies on synergies and your understanding of which abilities should be working with which abilities and which operatives need to be near which operatives. There's definitely a lot to juggle. And this definitely doesn't put it towards being a beginner team. If this is the first team you're jumping into, it's a bit of a mental load. There's a lot to learn and a lot to grab. They'll still perform okay, but to get the best out of them and not feel like they're, I guess, weak, for want of a better term, you've really got to know how to use all those synergies. Cult Ambush also gets a second dot point or a second part to it this time around. In each activation, if you do change the order from conceal to engage mode, you actually get the benefit to re-roll in shooting or fighting, to pick a number and re-roll those dice. So say for instance you've missed and you rolled a shitload of 2s, or you can re-roll those 2s, or if you've rolled a 1. So this is one of those ones, it's a bit of luck about it. A lot of your operatives, your neophyte guys, are hitting on 4s a lot of the time, so there's still 3 2s and 1s they can miss on, so it won't always be huge. But definitely knowing that they have that ambush feel and that they have more success, it really ties into that feeling of they've got the jump on the enemy, and them hitting as they make that surprise attack is really thematic and quite strong as well. There's also ways to make this a little bit better and even more consistent, so we'll find out about those a little bit later on. The next part is Preternatural Assassin. So this applies to, I guess, your elites or your cult agent models. Now, again, that's something when we go through the team rundown, we'll find out a little bit more about which models that applies to. But again, very thematic, and it does give these, I guess, characters, for want of a better word, they are more character or elite models. We're starting to see that slowly sneak in a little bit more to make those teams feel a bit more elite. And these models do. They've got a 4+ invulnerable save. So that's really great for a team that's not known for its survivability or its durability. That is an absolute game changer for this team, as opposed to rolling on 5s. It also does, there's an extra one as well that helps you work to stay, get an extra benefit from using your conceal and staying in cover. So when you keep these operatives in cover, if a shooting attack is made against them, you can actually choose to retain an extra dice as a cover save, so you'll get 2, or you can actually choose to upgrade 1 to a critical. So things like that are really important, and this already shows straight away how you should be playing this new team. There's lots of hints just within those abilities. You're definitely wanting to get the drop of your enemy. You know you're going to be changing your orders at crucial times. You know you're going to be maximizing your use of cover, and maximizing your use of engage and conceal mode. So there's already big clues there to how these guys should play and how you get the best out of them. An extra thing to keep in mind as well with those agent operatives, they can't actually take equipment. So just keep that in mind. Look, I actually genuinely don't think they need it. They've got enough going on and it's all really good, but just keep that in mind. So there won't be any grenades or climbing ladders or anything like that you can attach to them as well. So when we look at the team, the first thing you start with here is the leader. So the leader, nothing too special here, but we'll note that this leader is a neophyte leader. So for some people, that's not that exciting. Obviously, this isn't a powerhouse character compared to what a lot of the other teams get for their leaders, but you can still equip them to be close combat or to be long range with auto guns, etc. It's just really, this is your basic kind of leader unit, and I think he's definitely more of a support character as opposed to, your leading from the front kind of character. So he's got some tricks, and he's definitely a force multiplier, which is also what I think a leader character should be. There's also a few tweaks that have been added into some of the weapons, and they're quite minor, but they do make some of them a bit more interesting than they might have been before. The auto pistol has been changed to a master crafted auto pistol, which basically just means they've upped it a little bit and they've added some special rules. So that gets lethal 5+. It also gets balance. So it just means it's hitting a bit more consistently, and you've got the lethal 5+, getting that little bit of extra damage. The rest of the stat line for it though stays the same. The other ones that have changed are more close combat. So the chainsword now gets a little bit more interesting. Its damage profile's moved up, and it also gains ceaseless. So the chainsword's definitely a bit more of a viable and interesting option now if you think your leader's going to get into a bit of fisticuffs
handcuffs.
The power pick's also just had a tiny little one. It's just knocked one off its critical damage down from 6 to 5. Not a huge change. I don't think that would necessarily mean you'd take it or you wouldn't take it. That 6 damage was very, very nice for that for free. But I mean, this isn't a huge nerf. And apart from getting cold ambush, the other benefit, and this is where we see synergies again, that's going to be the word of the day, synergy. Usually my word is consistency. Now it's synergy. Shadow Vector is the ability that your leader has. And if you read a lot of the rules here and you look at the tactical and strategic ploys, you're probably thinking, where the hell am I going to get that many command points from? Because there's so many cool abilities. There's so many things you want to try out. And as we know in this game, using your command points for the right things at the right time can be the difference between winning a match and losing a match, or making your team viable and it not working. This is one way that they get around that. Once per turning point, you can use either Slink into Darkness or the Coiled Serpent tactical ploys for free. Basically, as long as your leader operative has line of sight to the operative wanting to use it. That's great news. Line of sight, get your leader operative. But again, it already gives you a little bit of a hint as to ways you should use your leader operative. In the test games, and you'll see a little bit later, the way I used him was definitely like a support character. So if there was people that I was wanting to use those abilities, especially Slink in the Shadows, that was huge because it lets you guys go from engage back to conceal without spending a command point. Obviously, you could do that in the previous edition, but again, costing a command point. This is a great way to buff your weapons, make your heavy weapons a lot more viable as sniper characters who can then lurk off into the darkness. No CP, that's a win. Once you've got your leader selected and decided how to kit him out, then it's onto the rest of the team. So the rest of the Wyrmblade fire team is made up from 13 other operatives. But there's a little bit of a catch, which is you do have access to the agent operatives, and each selection of them costs you 2. So just keep that in mind. Realistically, I think there'd be very few times you would not take 2 of them. But that obviously then brings down, I guess, your remaining points to spend on selecting other operatives down to 9 other operatives. So just keep that in mind. Hey, there's nothing stopping you from taking a whole bunch of neophytes and having a 14-man team. If that's your game, you do you. But for me, the exciting part of this fire team is being able to take those agents. And I think every time I play them, I will be picking 2 out of these 3. And just to confirm, you can only ever take 2. There's obviously, I guess, 3 models, but it's really gives you 4 options of those models, but you're only ever taking 2. So I'm sure as I play more games, I'll be testing out different combinations to get the most out of them. And again, I'll take you through what I played in the first couple of games a little bit later on. First up, it's the one, the only, it's the Cowboy.
Because I wanna be a cowboy, baby.
The Call-a-morph makes his return to Kill Team, and I couldn't be happier. I literally just finished painting this model because I had a sneaking inkling suspicion that just maybe he might get a go, because I thought, geez, he's perfect for this game. And lo and behold, here he is, and he is pretty good. The big thing to note with all the cult agents is they all have 3 APL. So take that, Space Marines and Custodes, not so special now. These guys have 3 APL, which automatically makes them very dangerous and versatile operatives. The Call-a-morph in particular, because he's got quite a few special abilities to spend that AP on that's not just move and shoot. Be aware, 9 wounds, still not super tough, 4 up save, and also 4 up invulnerable save because of they've got preternatural assassin as one of their abilities as well. So keep that in mind. They've got the invul, which is really, really good, but if anything gets through, it's gonna hurt them, and they really can't survive sort of more than 1 round of shooting or 1 round of shooting if it's from a big gun. The first weapon to look at is the Liberator Auto Snub. It's great. The 6 shooters, it's got the 2 profiles. It's got a short range and a long range version. Obviously, being pistols, it's all about doing your best to get it into that short range profile. it is an absolute shredder when you do get it in there. 5 attacks, hitting on 2s. You've got rending. You've got P1 on it on criticals as well. Look, it's pretty brutal. And, when you're rolling 5 dice, you're hopefully going to see at least 1 critical. And then to be able to then get another critical, this thing definitely does some work. But like any gun, getting within pentagon of your opponent leaves you open to charges, counter charges, getting shot yourself with heavy weapons. So I've definitely used this guy as a counter attacker in himself. So using his conceal and then launching out to opponents to cause some damage and some mayhem, and then get back into cover or out of line of sight very quickly. Don't think just because he can deal a lot of damage, he's the epitome of this team. He is a glass cannon. He can deal a whole bunch of damage, but he will break under pressure very quickly. The long range profile, obviously not quite as good. You're losing one of your shots, and also your ability to hit is going to a 4+. You still keep all the special rules, so it's not the end of the world to use this. It's just not ideal. And I think if you're with the correct placement and using him in the correct way, hopefully you won't have to lean on it too heavily. But in a pinch, if you are needing to take off the last few wounds or someone like that, it can still be really, really consistent. Especially if it's still partnered with a cult ambush. So each activation when you're changing from conceal to engage, getting that reroll for a lot of your misses, again, helps boost that consistency. We've got a few abilities and unique actions that this character can do. First up, heroic inspiration. Basically, if your unit, if this character is killing people, he's inspiring the team. Operatives that are inspired within square of this operative will get the benefit of being able to, I guess, effectively have lethal 5+, turning a 5+ into a critical as well. So it's improving their efficiency of the guys around him. And you will see that because you still have quite a few GA activation 2 guys, it's not too hard to keep you guys in groups bunched up. Not too close, let's not get messed up by torrent or splash. But if you're keeping guys relatively close to each other, again, there's more synergies to them working together. The other great one, and very appropriate, expert gunslinger.
Because I wanna be a cowboy, baby.
Letting this operative do 2 shoot attacks. Yeah, it's great. This guy shooting twice, especially if your opponent's made a bad decision with some of their placement, or you can drop in where there's multiple units, you can very reliably cripple 2 units very quickly. The unique action Hypersense is really, really cool. It effectively turns the pistols into a grenade, gives the indirect and no cover special rule, so anyone thinking that they can hide from this operative, for 1 AP, well, you can ruin that illusion. You do lose the other abilities you have, so you lose your P1 and you also lose rending, but it's a pretty good trade-off because you're still going to be hitting really consistent. They don't get a cover save, and again, if you're in that pentagon distance, pretty brutal. This guy is, without a doubt, one of my favorite operatives, and just on rule of cool, he'll nearly always be getting a run in my team.
Because I wanna be a cowboy, baby.
Next up is the Locus, another agent operative with a whole bunch of special tricks. These guys, all your agents, have so many extra rules, bits and pieces, so sorry if this video goes for a long time. There's just a lot to talk about. A lot of the regular neophyte guys, well, you'll see, they're pretty standard. This guy's rocking the same stat line for his main stats as the Call-a-morph. So you've still got the 9 wounds, you've still got the 4+ invulnerable save. So same issue, and I was a little bit nervous for this character being Genestealer Cult's close combat. We know close combat, for want of a better term, is brutal in this new edition, and it's no exception that these guys may get crushed if they get into close combat a bit too soon. But he also has some handy little tricks to keep him out of trouble. First up, we'll look at the weapons here. Barbed tail, and this couldn't remind me any more of Aliens, all my favorite movies, especially on the model where you can see the sneaky little tail outside the, the hanging out the cloak there, looking a little bit menacing. This is a super short range attack. It's just blue or square or 3 inches, whichever way you want to say it. Interestingly enough though, it's super close range, but it's also silent. So using it while remaining in cover, already working towards what we know these guys need to do, and that's stay in cover. 4 attacks on 3+, 3/4 damage. It's like a basic kind of pistol. So probably pretty situational, but don't forget, these guys have 3 APL. So straight away, this could be a sneaky thing to use before a charge to weaken an opponent, to make sure that you're maximizing your chance to do damage to them and limiting their chances to hit back at you. So already one way you're seeing there that we can mitigate a bit of damage potentially. Locus blades are the other weapon he's carrying. 5 attacks on 2s, 4/6, lethal 5+. Yeah, very tasty. Very powerful, hitting super consistently. These guys are gonna deal out damage, and that's definitely wasn't my concern with this character. And it's one of the ones I haven't had a chance to run yet, and I'm super curious too because I want to know how they go. But you'll see next with the unique abilities and special rules that this is where it turns those tasty weapons even a bit tastier and shows off how they can be a bit more survivable. Duelist is the first way this character stays alive. So even if you are charged, you can activate one of your attacks first. Catch being, it has to be a parry, but I actually really like that because straight away you're taking out, you're taking damage out of the equation, and whether it's a crit or a regular, you should be pretty confident that you're going to have at least a few options on what you can take away. Yeah, this is how they stay alive, and I like it. Expert Swordsman is one, though, that screams really good, but also screams really dangerous. And I think it will definitely depend on the opponents that you're facing. If you're able to get this character amongst a whole bunch of guardsmen or Tau or a team that's not hugely strong in combat, this could be an absolute devastating ability to use. Effectively lets you fight twice, which is already great. So killing 2 potential operatives in 1 activation. But you also, once you finish a combat, get a free charge up to blue. So basically being able to kill someone and then effectively pile into the next combat and fighting again. You'd be very hard pressed if you were doing this maybe against, some assault intercessors. Use this in the right situations and then also understand when it's probably not tactically viable because, it's, you don't want to lose this character in 2 rounds of combat in 1 turn unless it's getting you some really big scalps. Quicksilver Strike is one that I actually do really, really like. And I think, again, it's very thematic. It works with the idea of your opponent doing something and then being caught out. It's basically increasing the range of, your engagement range of the character to blue square or 3 inches around him. So if an operative goes to move past a normal move or a charge action that takes it within that distance of this operative, basically this operative gets to charge them and engage them. It stops that opponent right at the edge of that engagement range and they get to perform, and they can't move anywhere till they do this fight action with this operative as the attacker. So that's huge. So we're already thinking about ways to use this, and for me the big thing is you've got quite a lot of guns and a lot of vulnerable units, and it makes you want to use this unit as, I guess, a protective shield or a barrier to help you protect those vulnerable units in your backline, or to stop an operative trying to steal an objective off you as well, a lot of the time believing that they can get around you or something like that. This is really, really cool, and it's definitely got me thinking about other ways to do this for the whole team, of using units as blocking units versus straight out aggressive units, making your enemy make mistakes, walk into the wrong areas, or charge the units they don't want to. Hopefully I'll get the Locus on the board very soon and be able to actually test out that. That's just me reading the data sheet. I can't back up anything further than what we've seen there, but I'm super excited to see them in action. Next up is the Sanctus Sniper. This is what you hoped and expected, and how this, how you would imagine this operative working. They are a fantastic sniper unit. If not, they'd be right at the top of the food chain if they're not already the best now, because they've got really accurate gun, they do great damage, and they're just consistent. I've found in the 2 test games I've had, if they looked at a unit, they delete a unit. As long as you place them in a great position early on, they can really go to work. Again, their actual stat line is the same as the other agents, so nothing to report there, but it's definitely their weapons and the unique abilities and actions that make this unit its best. The Sanctus Sniper Rifle, 4 attacks, hitting on 2s, 3/3 damage, mortal wound 3 on criticals. Look, this is a great gun already. Mortal wound 3 on criticals is already really good. The thing we probably need to point out here though is that it can get even better. One of the unique actions, which is target vulnerability, until the end of the activation, it pushes this gun up to a lethal 5 up. So all of a sudden you've got 4 attacks hitting on 2s, lethal 5 up, and now 5s and 6s are dealing out 3 mortal wounds each. That's really brutal, and I found that combination, it's a no-brainer. These operatives have 3 APL, that costs you 1, and if being a sniper character, the gun's heavy, so once you've got them in the spot, got them in the place they need to be, you really probably don't have much else to spend your APL on, except for that and this other ability. Familiar's Soul Sight. So his little friend that's hanging on the pipe behind him there, this basically turns, gives your guy X-ray vision. Nearly makes it that there's not much he can't shoot at. Basically means enemies can't be obscured, and it also takes away cover from them as well. So now all of a sudden you're hitting 4 attacks on 2s, lethal 5 up, mortal wounds on those, 3 mortal wounds on that, and now all of a sudden they get no cover and they can't be obscured. You can see why no area on the battlefield is too safe from these guys. And I think, again, one of the most powerful things about them, though, is that people will do their best to avoid this operative. So in terms of board control or locking down an area, although you might go, geez, that's an expensive way to do that, if it's covering an objective, or if it's covering units to be able to do mission actions, that's hugely powerful in and of itself. That just as a pure deterrent, this guy is unbelievable. But if your opponent is silly enough to let him, go to work and do his business, yeah, he's going to mess some stuff up. Add that into things like your TacOps without thinking too hard into it, but, seek and destroy and putting Headhunter on him or something like that, or challenge, or, there's very, very good ways to straight away make this character hugely damaging. In the 2 games I've had with him so far, he's been close to MVP both times. The other version of the same kind of guy is the Sanctus Talon. So this is basically the close combat. So we're swapping out the sniper rifle for a nifty little green dagger. Again, I had concerns, close combat, these guys dying very, very quickly. But again, there's some rules that can help you. The Sanctus Bio Dagger is, for want of a better term, it's dangerous. 4-2, 3-6 in its damage, and it's got lethal 4+ as a basic rule, and it stuns opponents on those criticals. So you are nearly guaranteed to get stun on your opponent. And we know that there's 2 effects that stun has in close combat as that doubles up as well. The first time you get that stun effect through, you get to take out one of their normal attacks, and it's the second time that then you actually minus one of their APL to affect them later. But I think that's the big one there, is taking out one of the normal attacks. So straight away we're negating their ability to do damage back to us very, very quickly. Probably the only thing that hurts a little bit is only 4 attacks, and it sounds a bit selfish to say only 4, but if you know what I mean, a lot of other close combat operatives will have 5 or 6. Definitely would be OP in this operative, but that's why it does definitely maximize its effectiveness by having that stun rule, with it being able to take away one of their hits. Now, again, you're dealing with a character that already has 3 APL, and there's an ability that turns that already dangerous small pointy dagger into unheard of crazy areas of damage. The Familiar's Soul Sight this time around actually adds brutal and balance to the weapon as well. Now all of a sudden your opponent can only parry with criticals. That's really tough. And then also balance, if you did happen to miss, now the consistency of that only 4 attacks hitting on only 2s becomes even more powerful. This character's got 3 APL, so you're probably going to be doing that 100%. You're going to be charging, you'll be doing that, then you'll be charging, and then you'll be stab and face. Very simple. The last one, this is the auto ability, is Creeping Shadow. So this lets you charge out of the conceal order. Very appropriate and very powerful. So that means, again, you're leaning into that lurking in the shadow side of things. The other benefit, and I really like this one, is once you have finished the combat, you can actually perform a free dash action back out of the combat. So if you haven't managed to kill that operative, you can still do it. So get in there, fight. Geez, I didn't manage to kill that unit. well, I'm getting out of here, and now you're not getting struck back for nothing. Can also mean that operative that hopefully you've got very close to dead can now be picked off very easily by someone else, and hopefully your operative's not going to take any more damage. You can also use that once you do kill the opponent too, just to dash back into some cover and to stay out of trouble, so it doesn't leave you exposed after the fight as well. So yeah, I always err away from close combat in kill team where possible, because I do worry about that counter damage. But we've already seen with both the Locus and the Sanctus talon, they've got really good ways of at least minimizing it. They'll still take some hits, they'll still take some damage, but their damage output is huge, and they've got ways around it. So both really, really interesting, and both, some models I want to try it out with, that's for sure. The rest of the team is pretty self-explanatory, and for the want of, I've already talked for a long time about the other operatives, I won't dive too heavily into it. I will just point out the small changes and what else you can take. So you can take 2 heavy gunners, and the choices are, as before, you've got the heavy stubber, the seismic cannon, and the mining laser. I still think the mining laser is MVP, and for me it's still a bit of a toss-up between the seismic cannon and the heavy stubber. The stubber does seem very consistent, but I'm starting to come around to the stun rule a little bit, and with the 2 different ranges you've got on the seismic cannon, I'm starting to use it a bit better, and I'm starting to take advantage of the stun, and with the way you're moving and setting up this team as well, I don't mind it. So I am slightly more in the seismic cannon camp. I'd love to hear your thoughts though. Does anyone find the stubber more successful? I don't know, much of a muchness there. After that, you've got the neophyte gunner option. So you can take 2 of the 3 options you've got there. So you've got the Weber. Now the only change there, it's got an extra shot. So I'm not sure if that's a little bit of a sneaky FAQ, if that's trying to make the Weber a little bit more worth taking. Because again, in the past, I've been avoided a little bit. It got a run in my 2 games this time because I was just curious to give it a go, and because stun is starting to interest me a little bit, and it kind of paid off a little bit. I love the simplicity of the flamers, but definitely the torrent effect everyone's pretty switched on to about, so it's very rare you catch lots of people bunching up too much. Speaking of, the flamers, one of the other choices, and lastly the grenade launcher, and in my mind you're always taking the grenade launcher. Super consistent, and there's extra ways and things you can do. The Cult ambush suddenly makes it really, really accurate with changing out of your order and having that reroll that you can do. You can also use the banner to help buff them as well. So I think the grenade launcher is a no-brainer, and then it's a bit of a personal preference between the Weber and the Flamer. I think now, after these last 2 games, I'm going to persevere with the Weber for a little bit more, as I think it's an interesting choice. Next up, you've got the Icon Bearer, and I always think you should take one of these. They have changed what the banner does in this instance, and it's a pretty good upgrade. Previously, it was just re-roll 1 of your attack dice. This time around, it's much more specific to the Wyrmblade. It's paired up with Cult Ambush now. So instead of when you change your activation, getting to pick a number and re-roll all results of that, this time you can just re-roll all of them. So again, it's situational and works with this kill team only. You can understand why there's a bit of a difference. There'll be times where you'll already be in engage mode and this won't be much help. But I think if you set them up with the right operative and use it at the right time, i.e. the grenade launcher, some of your heavy weapons, there's definitely a lot to be said for hanging them around together. Plus, it's also another operative to hang around and protect some of your gunners as well. I've equipped mine with the shotgun, so a bit of heavy duty face shooting if anyone gets too close. And it just means 2 units in one area is always better. Also great as a cheeky late game objective grabber too, because you've kept them out of the fight for most of the game. The rest of the team is just made up of your neophyte brood adepts. Nothing special, no upgrades, no changes to them there. The main strength of these guys is their group activation too. And as you'll sort of see with some of the ploys and the things that these guys can do, that's still a really big strength, being able to, 1, limit Overwatch that way, because you're taking a 12 to 14 model count team out there. As we're seeing with a lot of these artisan or bespoke kill teams, they're usually quite a high model count. So it'll be interesting to see what that means means for Space Marines and other teams of Custodes, Harlequins, teams that have those smaller model counts, what will happen with their teams when they come out. And maybe that's why there's a little bit of a delay. Maybe they're trying to work out, what do you do? How do you make a team with smaller numbers feel as special? There's definitely something to be said too if objective grabbing is a concern, or wanting to take more bodies, for looking at dropping a special or a heavy, or, you know, taking an extra couple of guys out of your team to add in another few neophyte autogun guys to get another GA2. I wouldn't personally go that way, but I'm sure there'll be some list finaglers out there who will do some, you know, moving around and crunching the numbers and going, well, what's the most effective, having the extra bodies versus having the special weapons? As I said, some of the special weapons as well being not as strong, or maybe a bit too situational, you know, especially two of them, which are Pentagon range, you know, could make them not your playstyle if that's what you're worried about. Let's jump into the strategic ploys now. We'll just walk through those and have a bit of a look how best to use them. Meticulous Plan, 1 CP. This one is a once-off one. So just keep that in mind. Using this at the right time or in the right turning point is crucial. This basically lets you perform a mission action or a pickup action for 0 AP. And that's really, really handy. Note though that the operative has to be in the conceal order. So again, we're seeing a bit of a theme here for Genestealer Cults. Don't go out of conceal unless you have to. A lot of things rely on you being sneaky. But this is really great for a lot of those pick up objectives, you know, fuel run, you know, even things like planting banners, the mission objectives, picking up things, anything where having 2 AP for most of your operatives usually hurts you. This all of a sudden helps to make them feel a little bit more powerful. So being able to do a move and a dash to get to an objective, or picking up an item and then being able to hightail it out of there. This is a really good one. But yeah, as I said, only used once, so pick your turn. One with the shadows. Here we are again. This is a big one for all of you in conceal orders out there. Basically, when you're determining line of sight to one of your operatives, if they are concealed behind light cover, they're also actually obscured. So again, a great way of keeping your operative safe and negating that 5-up t-shirt save that they usually have. Another very handy one, especially if you know you're playing a shoot heavy team and you're trying to make some ground down the board. Writhing Ingress. Now this is a really cool one. Thematic. Maybe that's the word of the day. Thematic. Maybe that was the one I should have highlighted. Because this is basically, this lets you pick a terrain piece that's no thicker than triangle. And basically you put a marker at it. And as long as you get your operative within that range of that marker, you can move your operative through terrain. So it's a bit, I guess, like the orc who's got the ability to run through a wall. This is a great little tactic. Again, tying in a little bit what we were talking about before on those missions where you actually have to grab things and run away, or if it's getting an operative through a wall to be able to get to an objective that your opponent thought was safe or that was going to take you another few turns to get to. This does take a little bit of planning and using the right way, because yeah, you are limited by the denseness of that terrain, and also using it in a place where it's not a bit, you know, of a waste, like if there's a doorway on the bit of terrain or something like that. But yeah, this is a great way to keep your guys concealed and moving around the battlefield very well, because that's the other thing you've got to rely on here, is maximizing your maneuverability while still staying in cover. And some, you know, table setups, that can be a bit of an issue. Crossfire. So this ties in very well with the new rules we're seeing in 40k itself as well. And it works really well with your neophytes who are all toting lots of auto guns. Basically, if you shoot an enemy operative and you don't kill them, you can place a crossfire token on them. And then the next time another one of your operatives shoots at that same enemy, they actually get an auto hit. So, you know, think of the combinations of snipers, heavy weapons, special weapons. This is what you're doing. You're basically using your guys to set up some tracer rounds, you know, and these are the guys also that maybe you're not too fussed if they do stick their head up and get their heads popped like watermelons. You lose some acolytes to do this, to get some big units consistently wounded or consistently brought down. So I really, really like this one. I'd probably say I haven't had the best chances to use it or see it yet. But geez, I can definitely see how useful it could be. Slink into Darkness. So this, along with Coiled Serpent, are the two that ties into your leader operative. This obviously costs you a CP here, but if you're smart with your positioning, you can use your leader to get it for free. This is one of my favorite to use with my heavy weapon guys. I love having them on, a vantage point or, a position where they can dominate the battlefield, pop up, roast someone, and then use this ability to put them back into conceal. Note though, the new version of this definitely means you can only use it once per battle on each operative. So a little bit of your timing using it at the right times and understanding if it gets your heavy weapons one more turns of fire, I think it's 100% worth it, especially if you place your leader in the right spot and it's free. Coiled Serpent works in conjunction very much with your Cult Ambush. So it's basically meaning when you activate from conceal to engage, you're opening fire. This lets you upgrade one of your regular hits to a critical. So it works really, really well on top of what you're already getting with the Cult Ambush ability, having those rerolls. And again, with things like heavy weapons, special weapons, really doubling down on your damage. It can be a little bit CP hungry, except if you've got your leader there. Then all of a sudden, it's for free. So really handy. And again, placement of that leader operative, I cannot stress enough. He's a huge force multiplier in this. He's not going to be the powerhouse of other teams, but he makes your team better and he gets your stuff for free. So unquestioning loyalty is a pretty fun one. And again, thematic. Is that the word I don't know. That's a cool word though. Basically meaning that if an enemy operative attacks your leader or one of your cult agent models and you are within a blue square or 3 inches of it, you can actually interrupt that combat. So effectively making a free charge action into the combat. And then the enemy operative has to target that character. So this is a really good way to save an important character, especially because a lot of those guys aren't designed for close combat. And it's a great use of your neophytes. They're doing their team thing. Look at them go. What a bunch of team players. This is a really clever way with the way you set up your army to use that. You've got the bodies, you've got the numbers. And it also is a great way to trick your opponent into making a charge and then setting themselves up for a bad situation with, them having to then kill a peon, fall back your leader, and that operative is now out in the open. So it's really, really thematic in terms of the way it can make your opponent look silly. You think they've made a strong choice and really can cost them an expensive unit for you to only lose a neophyte. And that is the sneaky, insidious stuff we love to see from the Genestealer cults. Hiding. This is one that I've used in both games so far because I really think it's cool and I really like it. You use this in the setup phase and select up to 2 neophyte operatives to basically put into hiding. So they start off the board and then throughout your turn, you then activate them and put them on the board. They've got to set up within, and it's as if they've actually moved. So they have actually technically already done a normal move action. So they've lost the AP for that. But they still have options. They can come in the engage or conceal. And then obviously they can still shoot, perform actions. It's a pretty handy one, and I found I used it both times. Once to devastating effect by equipping these guys with blasting charges. I was able to put them in. Note that their group activation actually goes away. They become just single group activations, so you do have to do it over 2 activations, but it's still really, really handy dropping them on an objective if it's nearby. Helping you to achieve one of your TacOps. There's a whole raft of ways to use this, and I think it's really, really powerful for 1 CP. It's also a great way to counter deploy if you are playing any other teams that have access to abilities like this. Could be like Chaos Cultists or Commandos. There's a few teams out there that have great ways to get operatives into dangerous positions early. So because you get to do this throughout the activation of turning point 1, you can use it to your advantage and place them there when you need them to. So is it holding objective at the end of the turn? Is it placing them behind a sniper operative to maybe not kill them, but now make them, have to change their targeting priorities? Is it making them have to move operatives from one side of the board to the other because you're threatening a vulnerable or important unit for a mission objective? It's just a neophyte, but it's still a dangerous neophyte. One thing to consider, you can use it, obviously it does say neophyte is the tag word that you can do this with, so that does include your heavy gunners, but because when they come in, they are considered to have done a normal move action, so that in that first turn, they wouldn't be able to shoot, but it doesn't mean they can't get a great position up on a vantage point, stay in conceal mode for the first turn, and have a big impact from there on in the game. Special weapons, on the other hand, can come in and open fire straight away. Hello, Flamer, Weber, those close range, where if it's a smaller battlefield or a tight battlefield, or if you've got an opponent who can move really quick, you can really hold it off and make sure you deploy them as some of your last things you do, as a bit of a full stop to the turn to make sure you counter hit or change your opponent's plans, which I think is the strength and what you should always be trying to do with the Genestealer Cult, is you are trying to make them change what they want to do. You're always trying to give them too many things to think about, or you're setting up plans within plans so that your opponent is never 100% sure what you're going to do or where you're going to go next. It's all about that mental overload. It's definitely difficult this game at times to remember all of your own rules and your own plans, let alone then to have an opponent who's able to pull the wool over your eyes or change what you think they're doing. That can be really, really annoying and make them make mistakes. Now we're on to equipment, and if you're still here, you're doing very well. You obviously love Genestealer Cults, and I appreciate it. The first couple options are frag grenades and blasting charges. These are grenades. I mean, I'm not going to talk about them too much. They're definitely worth it. I said I think a great way to use them is put them on the guys you put into hiding and have them, really increase the damage output of those guys when they do arrive, if you just want to use your basic neophyte guys. Flash visor. This is one I find it a little bit meh. Obviously, it helps to ignore any APL modifiers, so I guess things like stun. I haven't really ever felt I've been too hard pressed by this, and I do feel, especially in a team where I'm going to have lots of operatives doing lots of different actions and different things, I'm not sure if it's that powerful. The only one it might help is maybe your close combat guys. If you are worried you're versing an opponent who you know has a lot of stun in their close combat abilities, if they got lots of criticals or guns that have the stun effect, it may be useful to keep those guys at 3 APL and not lose their dangerous attacks, but pretty circumstantial for me. Spotlight's pretty cool. Basically takes away an opponent's ability to be obscured if you're within line of sight and of this operative. For 3 equipment points, it's pretty expensive, and whether or not you're going to be able to get one operative to be able to do that consistently, and especially within that range, I'd probably leave this one at home. It's not hugely great for me, but some people might have some success with it. Cult Talisman basically lets you take one of your retained normal saves and turn it into a critical. This could be pretty handy. We know that our operatives can't take much damage. Remember though, you can't put this on your cult agent operatives, so get that out of your head. But things like your leader, your banner, heavy weapons, those kind of units that you know may get targeted and you need to take a shot or 2 more, this can be pretty handy. 2 equipment points isn't too expensive. Climbing equipment for 1 equipment point. For me, this is a really, really good one. And I find I definitely give it to my heavy weapons guys a lot, or guys I know I'm going to be pushing up on vantage points regularly, especially now we're looking at sort of more multi-level terrain, things like punishing vantage points in Chelnath and all that as well. It looks like this, equipment is sort of future-proofed a bit. It does talk about multiple levels and different heights and all that stuff. So I think this is a pretty solid option to increase your mobility of guys that usually that's a detriment. And if this gets your guys up there and into a firing position turn 1 versus them not being able to get there for 2 turns, for me, it also helps to limit that feel that I might need to put heavy weapons into the hiding rule. If I've got climbing equipment, I'm still usually confident then now with their movement ability, I can get them into dangerous positions turn 1 and then use that a different way with more special weapons / neophyte guys as well. So one way to think of it. The last one is the Cult Knife. This is a cool little one if you just want to chuck it on said neophyte operatives who you know you're going to be using suicidally down the board to give them a little bit more sting. Not much, but a little bit more sting in close combat. It just gives them an extra attack, so it's not like it's setting the world on fire. It's definitely not breaking the game. But if you've got a point or two spare and you know you're going to chuck some guys down the line, it doesn't hurt. Just means if your opponent does charge you, as I always like to do, you make them work in close combat. You know, you're going to at least chip a couple of wounds off them. And, you know, each extra roll's an extra chance for a critical as well. So it doesn't hurt. The last thing we'll quickly talk about here, guys, is the TacOps. They can take Seek and Destroy and Infiltration. They are actually really well placed to take either of those and do very, very well. I really just think it's mission dependent. I think you're always going to have the ability to nail some Seek and Destroy objectives depending on the operatives, at least your agents you take. Are you going close combat focused? Are you going shooting focused? They're probably the things to keep in mind over which agents you're taking as well, because they're probably going to do a lot of their heavy lifting on those objectives. Infiltration, this is a great one. You're going to have lots of bodies to push down the field, lots of guys able to get to different positions. Just understand your opponent, what they're going to be trying to do and how they'll react. Do they have a small model count, so getting around them and surrounding the board is going to be easy? Or they have a similar amount of units as you? Because if they do, that might be a little bit harder. You might be better pressed if they've got, you know, high models but low wounds to go for the Seek and Destroy. Also, what is the objective already asking you to do it? Is it already pushing you up and around the board? That'll also dictate it as well. Like all the new teams, these guys have their own custom TacOps, and I really like these. I think they're all thematic straight away. Nowhere Unreachable. This is a really, really cool one because it's true. There is technically nowhere unreachable on the board for your operatives. And this also works really, really well with Infiltration as well, because you're going to be going everywhere all over the board already. You reveal this one in the target reveal step of it, and basically your opponent will place a token anywhere on the board that is pentagon out from their deployment zone. And you've basically got to get an operative within triangle of it to control it. Do that for 2 turns, you get 2 victory points. This one in theory is simple, but you are giving your opponent some power, and I always am not a big fan of objectives that do that. The one redeeming quality I think is the fact that it does have to be so far out of their deployment zone. It's probably going to be in a position at some point, maybe even just late game, that you can get a couple of bodies on. Needing it for 2 turns also makes it a bit of a big ask, because you know your opponent's going to put it out in the middle of nowhere where there's going to be no cover. So yeah, I like this one. I like the element of danger and risk it adds, but from a tactical side, it might not be the best one. I think do this one though and have a bit of fun trying to get it. Next one is Perfect Ambush, and this is going to be very similar to some of the other Seek and Destroy ones you've seen, where you're trying to take out more operatives than you lose. In this case, though, the difference is you're counting how many actual wounds you take off your opposition. You basically need to guarantee in at least 1 turning point after you declare this, and it can't be in the 4th, that you will have taken more wounds from an opponent in that turn than you take yourself. To get the second one, you've got to do the same action, but this time it's all about your cult agents. So they have to deal out the wounds. It's all about only how much damage they've dealt out, how many wounds they've dealt out, versus how many your whole team has taken. So it shouldn't be too hard. So those guys are heavy hitters. They're dealing out a whole bunch of damage. Put them in the right spot and let them go to work. But just keep in mind, yeah, you've only got the 3 turning points to do that one. And we know with the first turning point, that can be very hit or miss in terms of if the other team is just as sneaky as you, there may not be too much damage dealt, if any at all. So just keep that in mind. I think this is a good one, but you've definitely got to set yourself up to succeed. Mark for Assassination. This is one, probably out of the 3, the one I'm not as big a fan of, just because I think it's really hard to get. Basically, your guys get an extra action that they can do, which is to mark a target. If you then mark a target and then kill that operative, you get a victory point. Sounds simple, but to mark a target for assassination, it costs your operative 1 AP, already expensive, and you've actually got to be within blue square, 3 inches of them, to be able to do that. So in a lot of ways, it's very situational, and it nearly to me feels like once that target's marked, you might lose them though, because they're so close to the enemy. They've got to be very close to do that. You can't give this ability to your agents to mark it, so it's not like you can take advantage of their 3 APL or get them to mark them and kill them themselves. I guess the other benefit you could try with this is if it's a heavy weapon and someone's gotten too close. I just really struggle to see getting this consistently. I feel like if I'm getting this, I've made other bad mistakes. So maybe it's a consolation prize. This one just seems to cut a bit too hard the other way. Whether or not I'd want to push for this, I might be missing something. I'd love to hear if you guys have got some tips on how to make this one work. But for me, yeah, geez, it's a tough ask. Guys, I'm going to wrap this video up here because this has already gone for a long time. I am also going to do a video which I will try to get out tomorrow, which will actually have all the battle reports and how they actually fared in combat in more detail. I just worry if I do that off the back of this video, this is going to be way too long and you're never going to want to watch one of our videos again. I'm sorry, dude, this isn't one of those clickbait teaser things. This is just since I've sat in the chair and I'm now daunted about how quickly I'm going to have to edit this and how it's not going to be quick, basically. I really appreciate you listening. I'll get that video up tomorrow, so you'll be able to watch this today, wake up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed tomorrow, and enjoy the battle breakdowns. I hope this has given you a good little overview. Thank you to those who managed to get the pictures up online. I'm in Australia, and apparently our White Dwarf release this month is going to be another 3 to 4 weeks behind the rest of the world. So we're already a little bit behind the 8 ball. So thank you to people like Glass Half Dead, who got some of the rules out there with his preview, and other people who helped to get them out there as well. Thanks to you, I've got lots of badly printed pages that I was able to cobble together to get the team on the table. I will still obviously be getting the White Dwarf because I want a nice pretty copy, but this allowed me to get it done. I hope this video was interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts below. Please tell me, are you excited about this team? What do you like? What don't you like? Is there anything you've discovered that maybe I've missed talking through the list as well? I always love hearing you guys' thoughts, so please jump below and start chatting. That's it for me until tomorrow, or whenever you choose to watch the second video. I will definitely get that up for you ASAP. I really appreciate you guys liking, subscribing, so please follow along. Jump on my Instagram as well. I was putting up all my modeling stuff and painting as I go there as well. I love for you guys to be involved with all aspects of the journey. Thank you to those of you as well who sent me pictures and versions of their custodes from the last video where I was asking about good alternative schemes. That stuff's really appreciated. I love hearing from all of you. Thank you so much. My name's been Reese. This has been a great video on Genestealer Cults, and we'll see you next time on 3's to Win.